With so much to talk about over the recent period, it seems incredible that I have yet to make a video on two of the most incredible revelations of the April Direct: the unveiling of GameCube games for Switch 2 and the glory of the Nintendo Switch 2 edition of Metroid Prime 4. In particular, though, there were a few games that were significant for being excluded from the GameCube list. Two are the Star Fox titles, Adventures and Assault, but that will have to be the topic of another video down the line. And the titles demonstrated evoked a mix of joy for me: Fire Emblem, Super Mario Strikers, Chibi Robo, and Luigi's Mansion; confusion, Wind Waker as opposed to Wind Waker HD; and despair, Super Mario Sunshine, a game that is more deserving of a remake than surely any in Nintendo's catalogue. But for this video, we really need to talk about Metroid Prime 2 Echoes. Surely this game is destined to return somehow. But how? There are, I guess, 5 options for its fate on the table. Option 1: continued obscurity as Nintendo prevaricates indefinitely about what to do with the title. Option 2: shove Metroid Prime 2 onto the GameCube app, and if you prefer a different control system, well, Nintendo gonna Nintendo, just gotta lump it. Option 3: save it for the inevitable time that they eventually put Wii games onto NSO as part of the Metroid Prime Trilogy collection. Option 4: do a bespoke drop outside of the GameCube app, just like Pikmin 1 plus 2. Option 5: do a Metroid Prime Remastered style near remake, although this possibly wouldn't be for a few years, given that Remastered only relatively recently released, and Metroid Prime 4 is still in the pipeline. Lots of potential options, but which are actually likely? And okay, I do think there's an option 6 as well, but let's bank that for now. Except for that mad few weeks last winter where the Switch 2 leaks broke the internet, I tend to give rumours a wide berth, but I don't think you can avoid them completely for this discussion. Rumours circulated about a Metroid Prime remaster for a long time before the game finally surfaced in 2023, and some of these rumours did suggest that the rest of the trilogy was also getting the same treatment, though some variants of this suggested that it would be as a Metroid Prime 2 plus 3 HD rather than a full and glorious remaster like the first game. Of course, even if these rumours were true, big if, that's not to say that they remain true today. Nintendo clearly has working GameCube and Wii emulators and has had them at least as far back as 2020, when Super Mario 3D All-Stars showcased both. In theory, therefore, it will be perfectly possible to drop games at any point, and that seems to have been what happened with Pikmin 1 plus 2. And in theory, they could still put out Metroid Prime 2 onto the GameCube emulator. The downside of this is that it would have the GameCube control system, which surely is not the best experience Nintendo can offer, and I do think Nintendo cares about this experience. Still, it's the Pikmin precedent which I always thought gave credence to the concept of Metroid Prime 2 and 3 being dual-dropped as a way to add a bit of extra sizzle before Metroid Prime 4. With the trailers for Metroid Prime 4 still being rather withholding, it seems inevitable that the company will do some kind of major blowout when it reveals the date, and perhaps even a full Metroid Prime 4 Direct. This is the time when it would make the most sense to drop Metroid Primes 2 and 3 as a double pack. The graphics on this might look a little shinier, thank you nerd for your emulation innovation, but otherwise they would be largely untouched. Except Metroid Prime 4 is showcasing mouse mode so brilliantly, and even Metroid Prime Remastered had different controls on offer, utilizing dual sticks if you wish to use them. It would feel limiting for Nintendo not to remap the controls to bring them up to date. Pikmin 1 plus 2 did have some optional gyro controls and camera controls, so there is precedent for tinkering with essentially an up-res port of a GameCube title, but it might seem strange if such a title were using Nintendo's top-tier control scheme. I guess the question is, what benefit does releasing these two titles provide to Nintendo? If they issue Metroid Primes 2 and 3 now, they monetize the big Metroid moment of Metroid Prime 4 that little bit more, and they ensure that, like with Pikmin, the Switch 2 becomes basically the definitive Metroid location, with virtually every significant Metroid title playable on it. They will have catered squarely to the fans and made a little bit of profit on the side. And yet, Metroid Prime Remastered was released at $40. I've examined the pricing of this game before, but given its large credits list and the evident labour of love that made it as magical a game as it is, I can only draw the conclusion that they priced it as low as they could because they really wanted people to experience the game. Sadly, we only have sales data for its first few weeks on the market, where it sold rather modestly at 1.09 million copies and then a small update later the following June. Now, to be fair, it released in that unutterably gorgeous period of 2023 where there was a run of the most sensational games with Fire Emblem Engage, Advance Wars 1 Plus 2 Reboot Camp, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and Pikmin 4 all dropping in a 7-month window, and it was a shadow drop, landing squarely into the hype cycle of Kirby Return to Dreamland Deluxe, another highly rated game. Small wonder, perhaps, if Metroid Prime Remaster's numbers were lower, but these figures are also likely incorporating a number of people who double-dipped on the digital and physical versions given these staggered release dates. This was, of course, a completely different approach than with Metroid Dread, which was given the most prestigious slot Nintendo could find, with a holiday release date alongside new hardware for which Dread was the perfect icon. Metroid Dread surpassed 3 million in sales by December 2022, which is great for a Metroid title, but for the promotion it received and the time it clearly took for Nintendo and Mercury Steam to develop such a lavish world and the unique enemy mechanics, it seemed to show the limits of Metroid's reach even with a Switch effect, even at its absolute best case scenario. Dread was a high point for 2D Metroid sales, don't get me wrong, but a Breath of the Wild style mega breakthrough moment this was not. And if people, myself included, hope that they may be able to position Metroid Prime 4 as a breakthrough title of a similar scale to Breath of the Wild, the positioning of Metroid Prime 4 muddies the waters a little bit. Yes, it's great to have it at the Switch 2's launch window and cross-platform as well, so that it benefits from both the Switch 2 early adopters market and the vast existing install base of the legacy Switch. But it's not like the franchise is going to have time to sit with people in the spotlight before attention zooms onto the next thing. With Pikmin 4, you could sense that, especially in Japan, there was a real Pikmin moment happening. With Bloom, Pikmin 1 plus 2, Pikmin 4, and that huge amount of merchandise and advertising, the series was given a massive push all of its own into the spotlight. And while there is still time for Metroid, I just don't get the sense that Samus is in a similar position right now. So, if the games are not inordinately profitable and they aren't currently trying to juice the IP, what would a Metroid Prime 2 remastered do for them? One option, and here I have to shout out Nintendo on the Patreon for the thought, is that Metroid Prime represents a part of a broader appeal to PC gamers that they're trying to make, exemplified in the adoption of mouse mode. It is Nintendo's unique equivalent of the kind of first-person games that seem so popular elsewhere, but have never quite cracked the big time on Nintendo systems. But it does represent a tilt towards a different kind of audience. And the thing with this is that Nintendo gets to play the long game, because Metroid Prime 4 will doubtless be one of their evergreen titles. If they want another title to back it up, well, there's the surely inevitable Nintendo Switch 2 edition of Metroid Prime Remastered, which, with 4K graphics and mouse controls, would be an even more perfect game on the Switch 2. And eventually I suspect there will be a Metroid Prime 5, perhaps even again on the Switch 2, if Retro gets straight to working on it after Metroid Prime 4. This audience will be very well catered for over the Switch 2's life. I don't think Nintendo need Metroid Primes 2 and 3 remastered to back them up, and since sequels of core games on their system tend to be seeing diminishing returns, even sequels to huge titles like Super Mario Galaxy and Zelda Breath of the Wild, it makes little sense to push the boat out for the 2 remaining Metroids. And yet, look, Nintendo has always approached franchises with a respect for the views of their original teams. Miyamoto has been largely resistant to Mario remakes, and so, with the odd exceptions such as Super Mario All-Stars and Super Mario 64 DS, generally Mario games have been immune from the kind of tinkering and revisionism that we see in the Zelda series, where perfected versions of games are far more commonplace. In the case of Retro, though, they have had 2 goes at polishing Metroid Prime, for Trilogy and for the Switch, and they are telling a cohesive story that does flow from game to game. If they really want people to immerse themselves in the lore of Metroid, Giving people the option to experience that story in the best possible form would be ideal, and giving Retro the opportunity to leave as their legacy the most perfected and iconic final form of those games, Metroid Prime in its prime, might feel like the right move for them. In this case, having Metroid Prime 2 remastered in a few years could be something quite special, and it could even free Retro up to working on different projects while still keeping their toe in the waters of Metroid. Or, here is one last concept. Option 6 from my list at the beginning. Metroid Prime Trilogy Remastered. Instead of re-releasing the first game as a Switch 2 edition, they simply create a package version of the three of them. This would rely on the perhaps dubious notion that redoing 2 and 3 will be doable in the same kind of time and budget as a single game for the first Metroid Prime, and that may be possible if they can heavily reuse elements from Metroid Prime Remastered. I'm not a game developer, and other people may have views on the feasibility of this. Yes, it would mean re-releasing Metroid Prime again, and people potentially having to triple dip if they bought twice on the Switch, let alone if they had the GameCube and Wii versions. But given that you will be getting two whole remastered games for the price, I doubt many Samus devotees would feel too hard done by. This would be such a massive event game in the Metroid Prime series that I suspect it would be foolish to release it too close to Metroid Prime 4, and in any event, they wouldn't want it too close to Metroid Prime Remastered, which is, after all, still barely 2 years old. 2028 to 2030 feels like the kind of window such a title could be seen in. So looking at the likelihoods using my percentage system, I'd say maybe 70% likely that we will see some form of Metroid Prime 2 by the end of, let's say, 2028. The longer we have to wait, the more likely it is that they're actually doing something significant with it, or perhaps just thinking about doing something significant with it while keeping their options open while they dither. I think at this point the Pikmin 1+2 style approach still feels the most intuitive, and yet, well, I really hope I'm wrong, because with how awesome Remastered was and how great Metroid Prime 4 looks, the idea of having the whole Metroid Prime sequence beautifully revived by Retro for the Switch 2 is really too perfect an idea to be true. Given the commitment Nintendo have given to backing the Xenoblade Definitive Editions, which have made the entire Nintendo-era Xenosaga available on the Switch, adopting a similar pattern of new game and remake in alternating cycle for Metroid would be a glorious prospect indeed for new Metroid fans and old alike. Thank you so much for watching. Do check out some of my previous Metroid deep dives for more, and I shall see you next time for another Nintendo Forecast. Thank you so much.